Hello and welcome to my mid-year reading review. Let's get started. So I'm going to go through my goals for 2025. I'm going to go through how I've done so far from the beginning of the year to the beginning of July. I'm also going to go through my favorite book of the year and the biggest disappointment of the year so far. So let's look and see. My first goal, and this is generally my goal every year, is to read 50 books a year. Mid-year, I'm at 20. I should be at 25, but I kind of figured out what happened. As I'm looking through how I did each month, I'm averaging about 4 books a month. January, I had 4 books a month, March, and then April and May, I had 2, and then in June I had 4 again. And April, May is when I was moving from San Diego to here in the Bay Area, so it was pretty stressful. I got impacted from all the US government stuff going on, so that really impacted my job and my mood, so I stopped reading as much, but I feel like I can get back on track, especially since I'm in 2 book clubs now, so I feel like I'm gonna be a little bit more motivated to read. My next goal was to read 10 nonfiction books this year, and for some reason in my mind it was 5 nonfiction books, and I was really excited to do this video because I was like, oh, I've already checked off this goal because I've read 5 nonfiction books, but it was 10 when I looked at my goal. So I'm on track with my nonfiction books, and the nonfiction books I read were The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating, which is such a cozy book. Not much happens. I gave it 4 stars. I also read The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, and it was a autobiography, so I didn't rate it, but it was very, very good, especially if you're interested in family vloggers and the ethics of having children in YouTube videos. And then I read The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which is one of my very favorite all-time authors. I believe I gave that 5 stars. Yep, I gave that 5 stars. And I read Everything is Tuberculosis, which I gave 5 stars, and that is by John Green, and I think everybody has read this book so far. Basically, amazing book. And then the last nonfiction book I read this year was Typhoid Mary, and that is by Anthony Bourdain. I didn't even know he wrote that book. That book was so good. I was really good to read it right after Everything is Tuberculosis, because it's kind of it's about the illness, but it's also not about the illness. Amazing. I'm loving reading nonfiction this year. I love reading nonfiction specifically about history and sociology and that kind of stuff. I think it's so underrated, and I'm really excited to read more. I'm glad it was a goal that I gave myself. The next goal I had was to track my reading in a different kind of way. I've been doing Goodreads, I've been doing Storygraph, and I kind of still do those, but I now have been making an Excel sheet because I've been able to track more things and the things that I care about, and I can kind of not manipulate the data, but I can create my own graphs and my own things. So that I've been liking a lot, and I've been on it. It's made me less on top of my Goodreads and my Storygraph, but I'm okay with that as long as I have it at least in one place. Then I feel good about that. But what I have been tracking is obviously the title, the author, the month that I read it, which I like better than the exact date because I never remember when I actually finished the book. To be honest, the genre, whether it's a first time read or reread, the format, so physical, Kindle, audio, that kind of thing. The source, so did I buy the book, did I borrow it from a friend, did I get it from a little free library, that kind of thing. The country of the author, my rating, and then the year published. And that reminds me of my next goal, which was, I believe, I wanted to see kind of generally what year on average my book reading was going to be, and it was kind of a loose goal of the average year being 2010. I'm just gonna calculate it up now and see where we're at. I've been, like I said, I joined some book clubs, so those are usually more recent reads, so that might have impacted my year, but let's calculate that now. Okay, so it looks like the average year is 2011.15, so that's like really close to my goal of 2010. That's really just 1 year um, sooner, more in the present. That's like actually kind of insane. I wasn't really thinking about it as I was like picking up books to read, but it kind of does make sense because a few books are pretty old. Like one book is from 1954, and that is The Lord of the Flies. So maybe next year I'll do like a year, maybe like 20 or like 2000 or something like that. Because yeah, I read a lot of books that were published either this year or like in the 2020s. So very interesting. The next kind of goal I had was to have about 50% of the books that I'd read not be from the US, or the authors be from the US. And I did not make that goal yet, but right now it's 65% from the US. Part of that is because I've been reading a lot from like local authors from like the Bay Area or from California, because I've been going to more bookstore events and things like that. So I'm not super upset about these results. I just found it kind of interesting. So basically, the second most popular is England, which is not surprising. We have France, Argentina, Korea, the Netherlands, and Ireland. So I do want to see if I can pick books more from like Asia or Africa. And I do like a translated book. I think most of the translated books I've read so far, I very, very much enjoy. I feel like they're so different from like the typical books that people normally read on like BookTube or Book Talk. So that's exciting. And then I didn't really have any genre goals, but it's just interesting data. 30% of my reading was nonfiction. Then literary fiction was 20%, general fiction 15, fantasy 10, dystopian 10, classic 10, and then romance 5. I think I read one romance book because I was in a book club. I'm wondering if I should put like the more specific category for nonfiction because I am reading more nonfiction. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not sure yet. And then lastly, the most disappointing book of the year so far and my very favorite book of the year so far. So my most disappointing book so far I read for a book club, and luckily most people from the book club felt similar to me. It was A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I've never read an Emily Henry book before, so I've heard good things about her books, but this one just felt like every other book. I just didn't feel like I cared about the characters that much. It felt like she was kind of drawing from, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but it didn't do it as well. There was a twist at the end, and I just honestly didn't care. I gave it 3 stars. It was like entertaining, it'd be a good beach read. It would be a good read, listen to on like a road trip or something. It wasn't like a frustrating read at all. It just didn't do anything for me, and I haven't had like a terrible read this year so far. So Emily Henry, 3 stars. I might pick up another one of her books because I've heard good things, but this one didn't do it for me. And then another popular book is my favorite book of the year so far. It is Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. I've actually never read a John Green book before. Everything is Tuberculosis is about tuberculosis, but it's all the society kind of implications of this disease, how we've looked at it when more rich people had consumption versus now when it's more people from poorer countries. So it's a very digestible read. It wasn't like too sad. It definitely was sad, but I read it at the beginning of this year, and then I read part of it. I listened to part of it on a road trip with my husband, and he also liked it. So I think it's a great read. If you haven't picked it up so far, I highly recommend it. That's the wrap up. But thinking about my reading for the rest of the year and how I can kind of hit my goals that I want to hit, I've been kind of thinking about what do I want to do. So I'm thinking every like Sunday, I want to go and make sure that I am inputting the books that I'm reading, actually thinking about my TBR. I don't really think about it that much, and kind of making a plan for myself. I'll definitely read whatever I want to, but I do think that sometimes I'm like, oh, I really wanted to read this book at like this season or like this time or on this trip. And I just forget about it. For example, there's like a few books I wanted to read in July and then I forgot that I wanted to read them. So I think I'm gonna like write those things down like in my Excel sheet as well, maybe on a different page, but I think that would be helpful. And then I'm really going to try to make myself read before I go to sleep. Phone addiction is real and it's so difficult. Even if it's like a couple pages, I'm like, you have to read before you go to sleep. But yeah, that's like most of it. I think I'm doing pretty good besides just the amount of books. I'm reading a little bit less. You know, I think it's mostly because of the move. But yes, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!